Roads, railways, power lines cut all across India's landscape. It is near impossible to find a place without signs of linear infrastructure. Such linear intrusions can have lasting adverse impacts on wildlife and on the landscapes that they traverse. In this video, we look at the impacts in greater detail. Impacts of linear infrastructure are twofold: direct and indirect. Direct effects include habitat loss, habitat fragmentation, and animal mortalities. Indirect effects include habitat degradation, poaching, and over the long term disruption of ecological processes and ecosystems. Visibly, new railways, roads, and power lines lead to habitat loss where they are built. Their periphery becomes degraded due to clearance of vegetation, soil erosion, and pollution. Even the process of constructing linear infrastructure causes a large amount of disturbance to habitats and the animals therein. Power lines too, for safety purposes, require clearance of vegetation under high-tension cables. One of the most observable and well-studied impact of linear intrusions is animal mortality. Animals, out of necessity for forage, water, finding a mate, need to cross roads when they pass through their habitat. In the process, many die or are injured. This graph shows a modeled probability of collision for tigers with respect to traffic volumes. As traffic volume increases, probability of a collision increases, decreasing chances of crossing. The probability of crossing or colliding varies as per animals' running speed, body size, and group size. Traffic volume thus becomes a barrier where there is a 50-50 chance of crossing or colliding. Railway tracks passing through animal habitats are also a site of many animal deaths. Here, larger, slower animals bear the brunt. In India alone, close to 200 elephants have died in train collisions in the last decade. It may be easy to think that linear infrastructure only impacts land animals. Power transmission lines, almost invisible from a distance, can be death traps, especially for larger birds and birds with poor sight vision. Other birds, like raptors, mistake poles as a safe perch to hunt from and get electrocuted. Linear infrastructure passing through once contiguous natural landscapes fragments it into smaller patches. It is most clearly visible from above. With such habitat fragmentation, an increase occurs in the edge to interior ratio for the now created habitat pockets. This in turn leads them to become increasingly more vulnerable to disturbances. This shrinking and isolating effect on habitat spaces is followed by a similar effect on the species, leading to biodiversity loss. Slower moving animals such as amphibians and reptiles get isolated most easily due to this kind of fragmentation. And they have the highest mortality in the world due to linear infrastructure. Linear intrusions and the consequent fragmentation of landscapes has certain impacts that evolve over time and are not immediately visible. Linear intrusions impede the free movement of animals across it. With increase in width of the road, traffic speed, and traffic volume, animals eventually stop crossing the linear intrusion. This is known as the barrier effect, as it restricts access of animals to their entire habitat. Coupled with habitat fragmentation, this leads to animal populations become isolated, leading to inbreeding and possible local extinction of species. Other indirect impacts of linear intrusions on wildlife and nature is created by us. Expansion of roads and railways in natural areas increases human access to these spaces. Such regions become exposed and accessible for poaching or collection of wild resources such as firewood, increasing pressures on the environment. Not all interactions need be malicious to cause harm. Simply the presence of people in wild spaces leads to habituation of wildlife in these places to humans. This can lead to major changes in the behavior and ecology of wildlife in the landscape. Impacts of linear infrastructure can be very varied for different animal groups. The following graphics give a summary of these impacts. For example, for large mammals, all railway tracks have a high impact on injury and mortality, but relatively less as an impediment to movement. Medium and small mammals are not impacted by power lines, but for arboreal animals, it has some impact. For birds, power lines have the highest impact. For reptiles and amphibians, roads are the biggest threat. While all of these issues may appear a handful to deal with, they're not without solutions. In order for both conservation and wildlife to go hand in hand, mitigation measures need to be designed and undertaken on a case-by-case basis. What are the factors that cause a road to become a barrier to animal movement? Do power lines impact medium and small mammals? How does habitat fragmentation affect wild animals?